Today we continue this Where's Mopsi app with the part 3, and I'm going to be working on this polished version. It's just a little bit of restructuring of the code that we did in class last time, but not very much. So the function names are the same, the functionality is almost identical. It's just a little bit more cleaned up. And I will take into account these comments that I got from you in the mockups page in that comment section. So I will try to fix all the issues that you reported with the app, and then if we still have time, we can take a look at the source code and see places in which it could have been done better. So I think source code is not very bad, but you can always find some room for improvement. So we will look also in those aspects. And tomorrow I will look through the projects that you submitted and in the source code there, so we can get more examples of what is good and bad code. So it's that's what's going to happen this week, mostly analyzing source code and figuring out how it should be written. So to remember how the game looks like, it was a start screen. Your user location is this red dot there, and I got feedback that people are more familiar with blue, so we'll change that. Once you select a game difficulty setting, your game begins, and the small improvement that I did from the in-class version is that I'm counting here the number of seconds. It's a very simple function, and if you are interested in how it works, you can just look in the source code for that. Okay, and here we had some means of faking our location. So for example, we could visit a target. This is how visiting a wrong target looks like. And once the correct target is visited, the game is ending. So this is the status that we had so far, and the time stops. So game over is signaled and time stops. But there is no reward message, there are no scores, so we will consider today how to add scores into the database. Also, we need a database for that. And also how to restart the game. So all of these issues were pointed out by you in this feedback section. So let's begin with the user's location marker. I'm just going to open PowerPoint. I need some image editing software, and I don't have any special one installed here. I sometimes use GIMP, and I recommend it. Or better yet, some vector graphics software like maybe Adobe Illustrator can be useful for making these kind of icons. But now we use just PowerPoint, and we will select some color for our marker, and let's make the border a little bit darker blue. I think that's good. Maybe we can add a glowy effect to it. So something like this, but I'm going to keep the same blue tint that is on the inside of the marker. So something like that. And now I just save this file as PNG. call it user ENG, and it should be here on my desktop. So if I go back to my project folder here, there should be this images directory with user PNG already there. So this is our red image, and I'm just going to replace it, and hopefully one task is done. Okay, back to our app. So now the marker is blue. And again, I agree with this, so it's very minor change, but many of you suggested that this blue is more common on different devices. So I want any user, any player of this game to feel comfortable with it. And if he's more likely to understand this blue as his location, then that's just great. Okay, that's first thing that we do. Secondly, we need to figure out this, what happens when we finish the game. So when we finish the game, I want to allow the user to write there who he is, just a name. I'm not going to make any login system, I'm just going to have a name associated with the time, his score, basically. So I will have to open our index.html page, and I'm going to define some windows where the user can create this, can enter his name information. And for that I'm going to create this a div. Maybe I will call it score submission, and inside it I will use 3 different components. First, I want to display the user's time. We already have it in the top left corner, but I want to have it bigger in the middle of the screen so that the user sees what is going to be recorded. So for that I'm going to use a div here, and I'm going to use the same large text class from where it says start game before. Reusing these components is usually a good idea. And I'm not going to put anything inside the div because I'm going to dynamically add it later on when I have the score. So for that I will need to address it somehow, and I need an ID. Let's just call it large time. And then under this I want to allow user to type in his name somehow. So I will create an input field, a text input field, and I think I'm going to add it also this large text. So I want the user to be able to see well what he's writing there, especially on small devices. And again, this one I will need to have a reference for later, so I will have an ID called username, and that's it. Now let's add also the button for saving this information, and then see how all of this looks like. So the button is very similar to what we have here, the easy, medium, and hard. I don't want to design a new class for it. And on click, let's just call it submit score, a new function that we are going to have to implement. And the button is going to be named, the label is going to be save. So if I refresh this now, of course these things are coming now up also on the start page, which is not a very good thing, but at least it allows for fast testing of this. So the title screen, the place where the time is going to be is here. This large time component is empty at the moment, but it's going to be similar to this start game. the username is going to be entered here, but the user has no idea that this is a place for his name. So you could, for example, write something here like a username and then this column, and then he knows that yes, there he has to enter his username. But HTML also supports this placeholder attribute for the input tag. So this placeholder is basically going to put some text inside the field, and the moment that the user taps there is going to be overwritten by the username. It's not a very big difference, but it makes a little difference when it comes to the way you use the space in the field in your app. So somehow reusing the same space. And note that if the user deletes the text, it's still going to re-add this your name component over there. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this, but only thing that we still should do is not display this already in the beginning of the app. So this will appear only later. Therefore, I'm going to put display of none CSS attribute over here. And now our start game looks the same as before. So I'm hoping that the new fields will appear when necessary. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to move to the main function, and in our main function I have made few modifications here. We will later use the Google Nearest Roads API to do some kind of snapping on the roads, so this will be about accessibility of locations. And we will also use our Lamad server for storing the results and retrieving the results from the database. So I added these links here because they are hard to memorize just now before the lecture. Okay, so what we are going to do now is make a call to our Lamad server that we want to store whatever results are the player has done when he presses this save button and after he enters his name. So from our new score submission field, we will take the username that he enters, his time, and submit it to the database. And we will need server-side scripting for this, and it's going to happen in this server.php file. Okay. I'm going to go at the bottom here, and we already have this handle game over function. So here what happens is that this game over attribute variable is set to true. It's a global variable, if you remember. And a clear interval function, this one just means that this counter interval for the time is going to be stopped. So time is not going to count anymore. So after this, I also want to submit the score. But I'm not going to call this submit score function because I haven't entered yet the username, and the username is not yet there. So I actually want to open this score submission page or make it visible, basically. So I'm going to say show score submission. I think this is, yeah. Show score submission, and we should also, before we show it, we should enter in that field for the time, the playing time, so that it is user sees big what will be actually saved into the scoring system. So I'm going to take that attribute, this large time div, and I'm going to give it some HTML. So this inner HTML is going to be equal to, and for the time I have an attribute called remember the name of the attribute I used. It's it may be in this controls.js. Yes, this played time attribute. So I could put the played time there. And now I open the submission window. I'm gonna put the volume down because I'm gonna have to test. And I go back here. I start an easy game, and I immediately visit the correct location. So what happens now? It's showing here 5, asking for my name and showing the save button. So it's okay, but note that here the time is formatted in a nice way, and here I'm getting 5. So this played time value here is in seconds. It's just counting number of seconds. And to format it, you should always reuse whatever function you have written to format the time last time. So here, this format duration function is called to format the time here on the top left corner. So I'm just going to call it again here. And now it's going to look the same as on the top left. Right. Okay. So I think this is going to look good. I'm not going to need to test now. But we still have to make the functionality for this save button. So for that one, we will have to create this submit score function. And this submit score function, we will have to make a call to our API. So we will make a server-side API that will handle whatever we give it and store it in a database. And we want to give it the time, the name that the user has entered. Maybe we should give it also the difficulty level of the game, because we have 3 different difficulty levels, so some kind of information like that. So let's try to create these parameters for it. And our API is going to support 2 request types. One is going to be for saving a score, and one is going to be for getting the results. So if we want to see the scores in the system. So request type, let's call it where is Mopsi submit score, and then the name of the user is gonna be coming from the username input field that we just created. The time is going to come from this global attribute, and game size, maybe we can use it also here. So this is going to be actually the number of targets. So I could also make some kind of constants here, saying easy, medium, hard. But maybe I have some special occasion where I'm going to update the game with some maniac mode or totally easy mode or something. And having the game size, the number of targets stored there, is just going to allow more more easy way to use the updates in the future, to create new updates in the future. Sorry. Okay. So how would our database look like? I created it beforehand. And for that I'm using this phpMyAdmin on our CS server, and this database, actually this Paikaprojekti database, contains most of Mopsi tables, and I created this where is Mopsi table for our results here. And the structure is relatively simple. It's going to have an ID for each entry, and this is going to act as our primary key, so it's going to be unique. And I set here this auto increment property, so this means that I don't have to give it values, they will just generate automatically as I'm adding new data into the system. Then I already have a field here for the name. It's going to support maximum of 100 characters. Game size, so this is how many points are in our game, and the time, the playing time that the user has done. Details, I add another text parameter here. I don't want to do it today, but maybe it's interesting to store some additional statistics in the future, like did he find the target on the first try? Did he find it? Which try did he find it on? And how long time did he spend between the targets? Or some of these kind of in-between playing statistics. They could be just serialized in JSON format, in text format, and just put in this column. So it's like anything that I later want to put there, I can in some format. But for the moment I don't want to do anything, so I will accept it also as this empty string. All right, so how would our SQL function look like to enter data into this table? I also wrote these on our server-side API, so we are just going to look at this code. So two functions, one for submit the score, simply insert into this where is Mopsi table. Three main different properties. So it's going to have the name, the game size, and the time coming from our object that we define on the client side with the attributes name, game size, and time. And details I'm just going to leave empty for the moment, so it's preparing for some future improvement if the game does become a success. So may become interesting to record more data there and give more information to the players about how they played the game. Right, and then I have here MySQL query function. So this is going to execute this query, this string basically. And note that here I'm calling something called a root handler. This is a component from Mopsi that instantiates this database. So I'm not going to show you that because it contains the username and password from this database, and I didn't have time to create a new one. But the reason I'm using this component is that I'm also thinking that in the future I want to store the whole trajectory of the person playing the game. So that's why I'm using this root handler module in Mopsi for database access. So if you Google how to make a MySQL database connection in PHP, it's just going to be maybe 3 more lines of code that give you this link, and you have to specify that where is the address for the database system and username and password. So it's not a very complicated thing. And then we also have a function for getting the scores from the database. So here we're going to run a select query where we just get all the different properties for the moment. And if we have results, then we are going to add each result in this results array and return the results array. So I have already the server-side API done. What I want to do here in our main function now is just call it. So the submit score function will be called when we give the request type where is Mopsi submit score, and get scores will be called where is Mopsi get scores. So that's why here we have now this request type, and I just need to make a post request to the server. So our Lammat server is already there in the top, the URL for it. And our attributes are going to be like this. And here we have a callback function. So this callback function with whatever our with whatever the server is going to reply to us, string. So let's just debug. Yeah, so let's just debug to see what the server is going to tell us, if anything. And I'm going to save the file and refresh the page. So let's create a game with easy difficulty. Let's win the game. Try to add the name here and press the save button. So the response is no. The headers seem to be correct, so we have the request type there, the name, sorry about that, the name, 2 seconds playing time, and the game size of 8. But did it work or not? So I'm going to refresh the database. It actually did work, so it recorded this this information here, and the details has been left empty. So I haven't sent anything for details there. But maybe I will in the future. For example, now I could record that maybe the number 1, meaning that it was the target was found on the first attempt. I could even put the whole trajectory, like how the person moved there, convert it into JSON string and place it there. So in the future it may be a good idea to do that if you want more detailed analysis. Okay, so it worked, but this doesn't tell me anything here. So I would like to see the standings. I would like to see who else has finished this game immediately after I stored my result into the system. So we need to write that. And before we write that, we need to write the visual interface for displaying these results. So again, we go back to index.html, and we have now this score submission field there, this div. I'm going to create another div for these, basically the results screen. So results screen is here. I'm also going to hide this one in the beginning, so it will only appear once the results are available. And inside, maybe I just leave an empty div, so similar as before. I call it results and then we will need a way to close the results also. So some kind of close button to get back to the game. Okay, so maybe something like this. Yeah. Okay, so now we submit the score, and we noticed here that the server doesn't reply with anything, so the response is null. And this is true because after we submit the score, there's no return from this function. So I'm not telling anything back to the server, to the client. I should tell the client here something. I should tell him at least that the operation was a success. So give him a error report if for some reason the results were not recorded. But I don't think we have time to go into that much detail. So basically error handling, there is a MySQL_error function that you could use to see if you have an error or not. So this function you can use to see if whatever query you did now was a success or not. So definitely do that, and then return an error message in case it was not a success. So yeah, but for now this is very simple application, and there are not many ways in which this can fail, so I'm going to skip it now. Okay. Okay, so I'm not returning anything, but I do want to call this getScores function somehow after this one has finished, this submit score. So So I'm going to go to my main JS, and after our submit score has finished, so here I already have the function, the callback function when it is done, I'm going to write a new function called getScores. So I could of course return in this submit score function call the full scores. But I'm doing it like this, a separate function for just getting the scores in case I will ever decide to have a designated high scores button. So I might want to have a separate button that just opens the scores even before I play. So that's why I want a separate function for that. So getScores function, it should make a new request type, so it's going to be very similar to that, but I'm just going to say here it was called getScores, and I don't need any other attributes for this one because the scores are just going to be whatever scores have been recorded in the database. So I'm going to take everything from there, the select query that we previously saw. And same post function we are going to call, and when we get the results, this time there will be something in this string output. So let's see exactly what will be in the string output by logging it to the console. I'm going to go back here and refresh the game, begin a medium difficulty level, and finish the game, complete the game artificially. I will write here Radu 2 and save the score. So I'm immediately getting now this JSON file from the server. It contains the information about basically what is inside that table, except the details. So details are ignored for the moment. Yeah. So we need to close this field and open the new results field and put this information, parse this information in a nicer form there. So how do we do that? Well, in the beginning, when this getScores is ready, I think we can close this score submission page. So I'm going to hide it, and we need to show the results screen. So that one was hidden all this time. And if you remember, our results screen contains this div called results, where we are going to more or less paste this string output. Let's just put that there for now. Oops. String output goes now there. And we don't have yet a function to close the results. And what I'm going to do now is actually a bit of a trick. I'm going to, in the close results, I'm not just going to close the results by calling this hide function. I could do that. But what I will also do is I will call location reload. This is going to refresh the page. So the moment when the person clicks the close results button, the page will refresh, and that means that my main screen is going to pop up again. So I allow the user to have the start controls again at the same time as when the results are closed. This is a bit of a trick, and I don't really recommend doing it because you have to reload the page. So any bandwidth of re-downloading pictures or whatever, you don't want more internet to be used necessarily. Of course, if you package the app on the as an APK, it's going to be fine because you already have all the things you need there. But still, and reinitializing of the whole page should be implemented, and that would be a better solution. But this gets the job done as well. So it's good also for you to learn that it is possible to refresh the page programmatically from JavaScript. May be useful someday. Okay, so let's try again. Starting hard game this time. Visiting the correct target, 3 seconds. Save. Beautiful, so such a nice result screen. So I'm just pasting now the JSON string from there, and I have a close button. So pressing the close button now reloads the page. So I just need to write a way to format those results in a better way. So now this string output is horrible. I'm going to call a function called format results. And I'm not going to give it the string output, I'm going to give it the object. So parsing the JSON string back into an object, and now we are going to format these results. So function format results. And I think that we can use a table for this. So I'm going to define HTML table, something like that, and let's give it a header. So and first column is going to be, let's call it rank, or let's just put the information that comes available from this call here. So what was it actually? Name and time. So let's just put name and time for the moment. And game size. And now for each result, we add a new row into our HTML, and instead of name we are just going to put the results, the ith result, and his name property. And second one is the time. And the last one is this game size. Okay. And I will return this string. So the string is an HTML string. And it's going to, if you remember, go back as the inner HTML of this results object. So it should work. But I forgot to close my table tag. Now, table actually has also this t-head and t-body tags as well, but let's see if it works like this. They may not need to be specified necessarily. Oh, okay, I did a horrible mistake. TH is actually equivalent of TD for the, yeah. So TH actually should be instead of TD, but in the header section. And the header section is also a row, actually. So this TR is holding the whole row element there. TH is just to define the header cell. Okay. So time is again coming in raw format. I want the time to be also parsed again by the same function that is going to output to format our duration. It's always a bad idea to format results on the server. For example, I could let the server format me the time, and then I would just display it here. But for time is not that a big problem, but if you think about distance, there is always this, are you using miles or are you using kilometers, or do you support both? Maybe you have a toggling option in your interface. You don't want these kind of things to be on the server, because that would mean recalling the server just to format the data differently in the event that the user wants a different formatting style. So usually it's a good idea to keep the data in as raw form as possible. So here we are just using number of seconds in the database and then formatting however we want. Okay. Good. So now the header is somewhat bold, and the username is their time and game size. This table doesn't look very nice. So styling this table can also be done. I think for the moment I leave it like this, and if we have time we can style it at the end of the lecture. but it seems like it's displaying something. So it's a bit better than it was before. And closing closing the results is bringing me back to the main menu because it refreshes the page. Okay. So one more quite important issue is this generating of a game with inaccessible targets. So all our targets are randomly chosen with a little bit of fine-tuning there, so we don't allow targets to be too close to each other or overlapping or whatever. Some distance constraint is given there. But that doesn't help us in this situation where, for example, this target is in the water somewhere and hard to access, or well, if the target would be maybe on top of a building or in a private area, then that's also going to be impossible to visit there. So I think that for this demo, we will just use this Google Roads API, and we will snap the location of the targets to the nearest road. If it's impossible to snap a target to its nearest road, maybe it's very far away from that road, we could warn the user that it's not a good place to play the game. Even though this may just mean that there are no roads there. So think about playing on a very, very open park with no roads, and it's a very good playing area. So it's a limitation, it's not going to be perfect. But it's one way to make it a bit better than it is at the moment. So it's very likely, if you think about the city, the urban area, that your target is going to be on top of a building, like just there. And then your 20-meter radius is going to be too small to reach it at times. So you do want the game to be playable, and it's more likely going to be played in the urban area. So that's why I think, for now, having this road snapping is a good idea. But I would, if this becomes actually played game, I would improve it with some other ideas. For instance, this is some unrelated page, but what I'm doing here is, of course, you have map, but what you also have is this building layer. So if I remove now the map just for the moment, this is what I was saying before, that very likely one of the targets is going to end up on one of these very big buildings, and that makes your game inaccessible. So if you look at the building area, this could be quite a good idea for how to filter the targets. So if your target is generated over a building, just try to generate it again. Then it's not necessarily going to put it in a road. For example, these are inner yards of buildings. So if I put the map back on, the roads are here, but these are also acceptable places. This is a park next to this Orthodox church, quite big park, and this is actually a playground for kids somewhere there, maybe. I think it's this one. Not positive, but maybe. So any of these places become now usable locations. So you can combine, if you want, the roads API with also this buildings retrieval that I have done from this overpass API that we tested before in the class. We used it to query pubs between Joensuu and Kuopio area. But it can be used for many things related to OpenStreetMap. So if you look in OpenStreetMap, you will see that OpenStreetMap doesn't have just streets, it has quite a lot of information, so the buildings I got from there. You can also learn other places like these football fields or parking places, so you can actually query many things, and you can even query things like is this a forest area or is this a lake area or so on. So if you spend more time with this with these APIs and read the documentation, you can get better and better systems for accessibility. But I'm not going to go so much in depth here. So we will just try this Google Roads API. This nearest roads component, I think. Yeah, I remember seeing this. So what it provides actually is you can give it more points. So I could give it all my points, and then for each point I'm going to get its snapped location on the road network. So a new point that is near to the other one but on a road. So I'm going to just do this, and if for some reason one of the points doesn't work, or I'm not sure how we will put this condition, we will warn the user that it was not possible to create a game in this area. Try to change your location and try again. So quite basic, but it should work. And if you read the documentation, you will find out that how the request should look like. So API key needs to be there, and these parameters, these points have to be latitude and longitude separated by comma, and points separated by this pipe character. And the response, if there are no nearby roads, no segment is returned. Now I have to say that I don't know exactly how this works, because what does nearby mean to Google? It's not a parameter here, so I guess they have some kind of a threshold on the server, but we don't know. So yeah, so let's just try to call this. I have here in the main.js file already the key available, and this address of the server is there. So I'm going to write a function called get snapped points, and original points are here in the, how to say, in the parameter. So these are the points that I try to generate, and this will give us the points snapped to the road network. For doing the request type, so we will call this Google Nearest Roads server, and then it asks for these points, but then we need to format the points in a string in the way that Google is expecting us to do it. So points string, not existing. variable yet, but I will create it, and then just add this API key, and that's it. So to get our point string, we define a string object, and we go through each of these points, and we say points string concatenate with the ith point's latitude, concatenate with comma, and concatenate with the ith point's longitude. So we just have to do this. And we need the pipe symbol to separate different points. One way to do this is checking the index here, and if I is greater than 0, so it's going to be 0 on our first point. First point doesn't need any pipe before it. But all the other ones will have now a pipe before its location. So this way we don't have a pipe at the end of the string. So this point string now is going to our request, and it is a GET request. The request that we just formed here, and our callback function. So function I parse it as an object, and let's just log this to the console and see what we get. Okay, we need to call this somewhere. So let's call it after our points are created. So at this point, at this step, our points are already there. We are ready to draw them on the map. So let's just call this function to see what Google does with them. So I save the file, go back to our project, refresh the page, and check my errors. Unexpected token. Yes. I have here extra bracket. So this bracket from here is extra. It should be still closed from the GET request, but it's going to be closed after the callback function is ending. So I think that was the only error. Refresh seems to work. I'm going to go to the console and generate a medium-sized game. Okay. So I have some response here from Google, and I'm getting two locations, even though here I have 12, I think, targets. So why am I getting 2? Probably because of these inaccessible places like forest, lake, that are farther away from the roads. I think that this is the only road that is nearby. If you see here, it's giving me snapped points. It's giving me 2 locations, but both of them correspond to the same point. So our point 6, basically this point, so I'm going to fake my position at point 6. This one seems to be the only one that worked. And I do see some roads nearby, but how about these other ones? Was it just too far away from the road? It's kind of strange. Let's try to move our location to city center and see how that one looks like. Because this place, this is like middle of forest somewhere, very, very secluded. So I'm going to fake the location to HTTPS needed there on the top, testing the location. So let's put it more in the center area of Joensuu. This is maybe better. And now I'm gonna try it again. Now I have more points here. So still not all of them are matched. So we have 2 locations available, snapped locations, available for point 0, 1 for point 1, 2 for point 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11. You might ask, why is it like this? So why is it so that you get 2 locations for 1 point? And if you read the API, it says that for the roads, it says that it gives you 1 location on 1 road and 1 location on the opposite direction of the road. So it, in some cases where the road has these kind of 2 lanes that you can go in both directions. So we are just going to choose 1 of them. But it seems like this method is not very good. So not all my points are getting matched, even though I'm in Joensuu area, in the center area. So this might not be the best way to solve our problem after all. Some of them are just missing. For example, point 2. Point 2 is this audience point. So there is a road next to it, but maybe this Google nearest roads only works with the main one. Then point 4 is also not here. Let's see which one is point 4. Okay, so again, kind of middle of forest. It's in this Mehtimäki area behind Arena building. Okay, but for other points it works. So for example, our winning point here, 0, is matched to 2 different locations. Yeah, because it seems to be quite well in the center area. So maybe we try to snap the locations, but I'm not going to say that the game generation failed just because some points are not matched there. So it will make some of the locations more accessible, like these ones here, but the other ones there is no guarantee about them. So there will be some kind of improvement, but it's not the best way to solve this problem. So let's just try to do it. So basically, to fix it, we have to go here in the get snapped points, and we continue. We draw the points and handle the map only after the snapped points are retrieved here, and we need to update the value of the original points to whatever Google is giving us, so in this object here. So we are going to open this snapped points from here and iterate through that. So what I'm doing is I'm going through each of the points here in the result, and I'm modifying the point at the index given by Google here to the location, latitude and longitude values given by Google. So I'm modifying the points in place, the ones where information is available here. Looks good. So I'm gonna refresh the game, create another medium game, and look a little bit at the points. So this one is on a road. This one is on a road. This one is not, so it's one of these couldn't be matched. And it's actually very possible to reach this target, so in this case it works quite well. This one's on a road again. Now this is not on a road, but it's also possible to reach it. If it would have been a little bit more here, then not possible anymore. So when I say possible to reach it, is because I know these locations. So I have physically been there, and I know that I can reach it there. And these, so it seems it does do some kind of snapping. All of them are on roads except for a few exceptions, 2 exceptions in this case. So point 6 is not here, and point 10 is not here. So very likely the ones that I just pointed out. So this is point 6, and probably point 10 is that. So not a perfect solution, but it should be generating a more accessible game than the previous version. Okay. There was one more comment that it is not clear how close you have to be to the target when you visit it. I remembered just now. So we could try to draw circle with radius 20 around the target. And I don't remember how to do that, but documentation is pretty good. So something like that. I'm just going to copy this code and adapt it somewhere. So when we are creating these points, we have this draw points function, and here we are saying I want to draw the target or the audience, or this 50-50 special targets. Give it the icon, give it a marker. Let's give it also a circle. So we give it a circle. Radius. I don't know what this is, but we don't need that. So radius is 20 meters. Center is going to be, I think, this position from here. It's quite easy to do these edits, even if I don't check the documentation for the circle object. Just by looking at these properties, I can kind of figure out what they mean. So I think the API is pretty well written. Okay, so let's see how this looks like. Nothing changed, or did it? So the circle is visible only when you zoom in. Here it appears less than the size of the markers, so it's somehow hidden. I could choose to make the marker transparent or some way to show the circles also when zooming out, but I think that this is just good enough. So because I'm having this kind of different zoom levels here from this button now, so showing all of them is like that, but if you want to go at the street level, you already start to see the circles there. And maybe one last thing, make the circle, I would make it some other color. So we're using this blue everywhere. So I would stick to that. This red is like, people will wonder, well, what is there? Is it the prize, or it somehow looks too attractive somehow. So to get the color code for this blue that I'm using here, I don't remember it anymore, but I open Paint. I use this color picking tool. So now I have this color here, and I think that I can, yeah, so in this edit colors I have red, green, blue. So 0 red, 153 green, and 204 blue. So our color, I could convert it into this hex format, but HTML, and I hope Google Maps also supports this RGB color input, where I'm just going to say 0, 153, and 204. Hopefully it's going to work. Okay, so this is there, and stroke color I'm gonna put the same, because it's going to look a bit darker. Here it seems like the stroke opacity. So both the fill and the stroke are by default copying from that page, given some transparency. So this one is going to be more intense, the stroke. So let's see if it does change in any way. Okay, so it's the same tint, but because of this transparency, it doesn't really look exactly the same, but I'm okay with that. So it's, yeah. I could also make it green for this other one, so it would look a bit nicer, I think. Maybe I do that and then we are done for today. So we will look at the source code tomorrow for this one and for your projects. It's gonna be a lecture just about what is bad source code here and how it should really be improved to allow other people to quickly understand it and multiple people to work together on it and these kind of ideas. So one last thing. So now we have our color by default. This circle color by default is going to be blue, but if it's gonna be this public or 50-50, we will change it to something else. So to what, I'm gonna use the same trick as before. So I think this is now the new color code. And here we will replace the stroke color and the fill color with the whatever color value we are getting from the top. Okay. Maybe small thing, but I think it looks nice this way. So the interface can be a bit more improved. When we finish the game, it still looks kind of bad. This this table, and I think at some point it's going to be very big, like going out of the screen. So it's going to need some CSS to look a little better, and maybe align it in the center of the screen. Maybe even give it a white background, because now it becomes unreadable here in this part. You can also experiment with this font, these shadowed fonts, like put a glow on the text. It's also possible to make it more readable. But I think I will update this app maybe 10-15 more minutes, give it some graphical improvements, and then I consider it final for this course. So you will be able to see the last version of it. Probably I will do these updates today, and tomorrow we can make the code a little bit better, and after that I will link it again to the page. But if you have any questions,